Welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be talking about luxury real estate across many cities. I've got Lisa Kirshner, a longtime friend and one of the top residential real estate agents. You should do commercial, by the way.
I should not do commercial. That's where you guys' expertise comes in. There's a big difference between the two, which many people don't understand.
Well, I'm thankful that you won't do it in the first place, because I don't need that kind of competition. But Lisa's been doing business in the west side of Los Angeles for, well, we'll just say a long time. So she was very young when she started. And her son, Dylan Elkin, is here to give us some more technical advice on what we're going to be going over with luxury real estate and how we can read the data and what we've got for current data going on in these high-end markets. So, guys, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
You know, I think it's, and I hadn't thought about this till we talked before we start shooting, is understanding how to read this data that's out there. And I think, Dylan, you were best speaking to it. Can you kind of walk us through how to put this information together so you can get a true understanding of luxury real estate in any individual market?
Sure. So the thing about luxury real estate is it's how it's defined by area to area, from metro to metro, but more specifically in Los Angeles, it's, neighborhood to neighborhood. So West Los Angeles specifically, there's the Palisades, there's Brentwood, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, etc. Each specific neighborhood has a threshold of what is considered luxury. So it can be, 8 million in the Palisades at a low, but on average, we're looking at across 10 million is the standard across the nation for how we're looking at what is considered a luxury property. And so we have a lot of data from Compass that has done an exorbitant amount of luxury real estate across the nation, looking at total sales volume, looking at high sales watermarks, number of transactions, number of sides, etc. The big thing here in looking at pricing is we're not looking at averages and medians, which is largely overused. We're looking more at specifically relevant information that is specific to clients. So they want to understand comps for things which are hard to do in this market, because how do you justify a $30 million property? You have to look at things more importantly, such as aspects of condition, layout, exposure, lighting, things that speak to people. We can get into that a little bit more later as well.
Okay. See, I thought they just put a number like 10 million. That was luxury real, anything above, but it makes sense that they break it down per community or per neighborhood. What's going on in the Los Angeles market? What are you guys seeing? I mean, I see so many of these 50 million, 75 million, 100 plus million homes. Is that still going on?
Well, I think it is going on, but I do think the media definitely wants to play up those homes. Sure. It's what sells and what's get people to watch. High end is not affected by any of the market conditions that the rest of us are looking at, other than if it is directly related to the stock market. High-end real estate and luxury real estate just is its own entity and goes by itself. We have limited inventory, and they're moving.
It's still limited?
Yes.
Are you starting to see it tick up a little bit?
I think that during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people moving out, and actually we saw a tick up in the last year and a half, and those properties turned over really quickly. They were moving out of state. They were looking for things in Wyoming or someplace where they could get more land. A lot of people moved to Hawaii, and Hawaii's luxury real estate is off the charts.
Yeah.
So we're actually, the last year and a half, we had more transactions, and we have the data from 2021, which is quite astounding. And I don't think it is slowing down at all. I just think that we still have a limited inventory in the luxury market as well as in the lower end market.
The interest rates don't really affect the higher end.
They do not.
So a big piece of that is currently, looking at the buyer pool in the luxury market is they're making decisions based on portfolios and the need to divest their, overall, more importantly, looking to
I never do that.
Divest their portfolios and making, smart decisions based on investment, relationship banking, things of that nature. Yep. And most importantly, you're looking at how to speak to someone in that pool of buyer pool. And they're saying, okay, well, everybody needs housing. That's a universal understanding. We all need some shelter. But when you get to the point, it's what are they looking for about the experience they're trying to have in the luxury market? So you have to be very smart about saying, how do we become an advocate and an advisor instead of just a relationship sales process or a transactional sales process?
Right.
So with limited inventory, it's how do you position this house to their needs, wants, and desires?
Okay. Well, let's dive into some of your data. Let's talk about what's going on in Los Angeles right now. Where are we at with the luxury market right now?
So in Los Angeles last year alone, I'm sorry, I'm flipping through my pages
That's all right.
because you
I kinda
picked
threw
one.
it at you, yeah.
Yep, you did. We're good. So over 10 million, 628 transactions. But Los Angeles is a large geographic area.
628
over 10 million in the year of 2021.
And to put that in context, a year-over-year change of additional 93% positive growth. So that's a substantial uptick from 2020 to 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. And that equates also to over $10.6 billion in real estate.
And that also is a 97.5% change year over year in positive growth. So, I mean, 2020 was an odd year for just about everybody, which is fair. So it may not be the perfect, one-to-one apples to apples comparison, but it's, a sizable amount of growth that people are looking to say, okay, now that things have normalized last year in some capacity, as Lisa mentioned earlier, I'm tired of looking at the same wall and kitchen configuration in this market. Let me do something different. And so that's, a clear factor in this.
Yeah, and I think that also was hugely important. In 2021, everyone said, okay, home is where we're going to be and be spending a lot more of our time.
Yeah.
People may not return to the offices like they did. People put, production studios in their homes. They put recording studios in their homes. They put major offices into their homes and even had staff start. So they needed more space. They want auxiliary dwellings. They don't want just everything in the main, or they want a basement level, and they want quality. Yeah. So a lot of things that are coming on the market in our high-end market right now, we're seeing are properties that were built in the 40s, 50s, need a lot of TLC and care, and would go for a lot more money than they're being listed for, because they're on beautiful pieces of land, over an acre, which is, not the norm for us in our West Side area. But they would trade if they were redone 10 to 20 million higher than where they're priced.
Have you seen days on market at least stretch out, or is that still short?
So here's the oddity with high-end market. A lot of it's done off market. Yeah. So we don't necessarily have, now this numbers that we're quoting you is including off market properties if it was put through the brokerage houses. If it wasn't and it was just done private sale to private sale, we don't have those information as much.
So the other thing to add about days on market is the pricing strategy. So how does one price a property? And we're talking about, even in the 10 million range. So we're looking at, let's just use the Palisades, because we have a situation there where we're looking to actively comp out something for one of our sellers who are actually buying something in this range, if not, substantially above.
Okay.
Looking at the area and having to go back and look at private sales and things of that nature, we have to really look into more specifics of the condition of the home, as Lisa mentioned, looking at the square footage, but what is the usable land space? Because a lot of the times in our West LA market, you're looking at things that are hillside ordinance oriented. Yeah. So factoring those things in. And then when you look at that pricing strategy and then really speaking to the right buyer pool, saying, okay, is this a deal? Now everybody from the past few months thinks that now that the interest rates have changed, that still applies to this market. So how do I get a deal out of this?
Right.
Or they paid for this $10 million less in 2019, so I want to want to offer them what they paid. How do you kind of build that narrative out? So the days on market is going up a little bit, but if it's priced right, which is the same thing in the normalized residential real estate market, things are moving quickly. So sellers are still getting the number they want, and buyers are still in the market, but the people who are in the market are very much qualified, especially in luxury, obviously. And they're, more involved in the process to be making decisions instead of just throwing their hat in the ring and saying, hey, I hope I get this, and then maybe pulling out because it's not right when they have a chance to think about it. So for the luxury market, we have to really make sure, one, the photography is right. Understanding how to really speak and build that narrative out of it is, again, an experience for the luxury buyer.
Sure.
Because they're envisioning, dinner parties, catering kitchens, things of that nature of how they want to actually utilize the property to its fullest potential.
Yeah. And I know everybody's wanting to jump through the camera right now and ask you guys, who are these buyers? Who has this kind of money? Where's it coming from?
You'd be surprised. It's coming from
every single vertical, every single business or every single,
everybody always thinks it's just
sector.
Everyone always thinks it's just entertainment people in Los Angeles, and that's not the case. It's business people. lot of private equity money, a lot of big corporations, and that's pretty much what it is. Yes, the what gets the press is the entertainment,
Sure.
but that's not what runs LA anymore. It used to be.
Right.
And also across the country, that's not what's running it. It's your big corporations, it's your private equity money, it's the people that want to divest, as Dylan mentioned before, their portfolio and have homes in different places and be able to spend summers in a different place than they spend the rest of the year when the kids are out of school or when they have time to do that. A lot of, well, and we also have the New York figures that, the Hamptons was absolutely crazy what they did. Thank you, Dylan, for flipping through. Likewise, Florida did very well.
So if we talk about New York as a whole,
well, Manhattan is
Manhattan's obviously a mainstay, and what's there, but it's at 6.31 billion last year.
Okay.
326 total numbers of sales above the $10 million mark, 91% increase year over year. Brooklyn had some sizable numbers go up of 46.7 million, and that's only through 4 total sales above 10 million. So you can see what was bought. Long Island is, again, people looking for land, things of that nature. So 5 total sales for 101 million. So that's an 853.99% change year over year.
Insane.
But it's the Hamptons, 2.1 billion in the Hamptons.
112 total transactions.
Yeah. So those are a lot of people, especially that are East Coast people that may have relocated throughout the country, want to go back to their roots, want to spend their summers on Long Island and the Hampton area and enjoy what they know. We have our own clients that have homes there. And it's a huge kind of pilgrimage to the East Coast for the summers.
So do you think a lot of people during the pandemic, a lot of people are moving out? Do you think this is a lot of them just coming back and buying? What do you think that this is all from?
I think it's more of a stabilization than anything else. People moved out during the pandemic because they could, because everything was remote. Schools were remote, work was remote. And now people are saying, okay, I probably need to have a residence in the area I moved out of. So we're starting to see them come back. They may not buy at the same threshold that they sold, but they're buying.
Okay. How about, everybody was moving to Florida. What kind of numbers are we looking at?
Yeah, Florida also had a huge uptick. Miami, Palm Beach was 3.75 billion, which was 158% change, and that was 203 transactions.
So the state of
Palm
Florida
Beach is not that big, though, right?
Nope, it's not. And then
numbers,
Miami would be the other one that we. I shouldn't say that. $1 billion in Naples.
I would never have guessed.
Yep, which is 220% increase over 2020.
And it looks like it was based on the math that we pulled. It's $9.094 billion in sales in the state of Florida. Granted, large, but we're talking about a couple smaller geographic footprints that are dominating that space.
And $3 billion of that alone was in Miami.
Wow.
Which was a 208% uptick.
Okay.
And Miami actually suffered a lot in the beginning of the pandemic in the high rises.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because nobody could get into them and nobody wanted to be in the high rises and nobody could show anything. And then as soon as things calmed down, Florida has.
Everybody came running.
Yeah. And then there was deals to be made too.
Okay. What about Austin, Dallas, or just all of Texas? There had to be. There's so many big corporations moved in there.
Yeah.
That I think. And Austin, I haven't been there lately, but from what I'm understanding, talking to my friends, it's been the amount of people living there now.
So from what the numbers are showing, Austin only did $189 million worth of sales, but as you can see from the year prior here, it's 562%.
And remember, this is sales over $10 million.
Correct.
So it's not sales in all of Austin.
But looking at the numbers based on what Joe's original question was, that's very indicative of what's happening there. So the big corporations are moving there, but they're moving their fleet of people there. So those people aren't spending that money. They're spending in the normalized market.
Right.
Austin, I was there not that long ago. I mean, the development alone, downtown Austin has always been there, but people are, the ancillary areas, like there's now the Domain in Austin, which is essentially like a Playa Vista built up city that's self-contained. So
everything moving north there.
Correct. And then Dallas Fort Worth, it's saying over 10 total sales, besides being sold over 10 million, was 115 million. So that's, in comparison to the year prior, a lot more normalized than Austin. 562% in Austin versus 68% in Austin.
I know it's crazy in Dallas because, when I was coming back from Dallas, about a year and a half ago. There was a lady on the phone next to me as I'm waiting for the airplane to pull up, and she was trying to buy a house sight unseen, and she goes, I need this house. And mostly her focus was she wanted her kids in the school there, but she was going to be in the Highland Park area, and she goes, I want this house. And there was nothing on the market.
Yeah.
So.
Well, again, the last 2.5 years has been a very strange market for us because in the beginning of the pandemic, nobody could see properties. People were buying things regardless of what the price point were. They were buying everything sight unseen, basically.
The process of even just getting into a house required, forms to be signed and approvals and things of that nature. So it was just a very bizarre change of pace.
And then we also saw a huge uptick in Colorado. So,
did you?
Yeah, 96 transactions over 10 million in Aspen. For
How are there that many homes in Aspen?
1.8 billion. And that was only an 11.71 price uptick compared to what we saw the numbers in Florida.
We're seeing, as Lisa mentioned, people wanting land. So Colorado, Vail and Aspen and Telluride. Vail and Telluride were substantially less. At least is looking at the numbers. It was 413 million in Vail and it was 186 in Telluride. But people are moving to Idaho. They're moving to Jackson Hole. Montana's a big one.
My friends from Montana are complaining a little bit. Everybody's buying the ranches.
Yep.
And so Yellowstone.
And so when you look at that, it's like, we're talking to some people in the luxury market who have homes in these places, and it's like they're having a conversation that I'm just like baffled by. Like, are you part of the Aspen crowd or the Montana crowd?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like it's become a community of people who circulate, and then there's summertime movement around, but there's also let's go spend the spring in Colorado and then go back to our primary residence in Northern or Southern California, et cetera, or even in New York. And so it's based on, trending of people and their similar folks that are in the same social circles. And then also, what's allowing them to get more than what they have and having more outside land to say, I want, pool space, but I also want a large grass area so I can have my kids or grandkids come play. Outside of just having the house itself. So they're looking for land also.
So the San Francisco market also was a very active market. It was actually up 86.8% for $2.9 billion. And that's just taking the San Francisco Bay Area. It's not taking, as Dylan had mentioned before, San Jose, some of the other areas, Alameda, some of the other areas in that complexity. San Francisco will always be a good market, but in the news, it will always talk about when things are faltering because of the Silicon Valley.
Right.
And it's there to stay. And it was probably overstated real estate values for a very, very long time. So it is ripe for a correction.
Right.
The correction isn't going to be a drop. It's just going to be a correction, which is exactly stabilization. We're calling it a correction. It's exactly what we're talking about in our market right now.
Right.
People think the sky is falling. It's not. It's a correction and it needs to be happen.
And they happen more often than you realize, regardless of the market, whether it's a normalized market or if it's a luxury market. We're seeing what's called, I think it's the NAR and also Realtor.com put out a really good article recently about the corrective market, which is roughly 10 to 20% against whatever the real estate index is. And so that's what it's ultimately doing from a professional standpoint is it's taking people out of the, real estate licensed professional pool that have just been only knowing the market they're in. So being able to kind of just make money by breathing versus someson like Lisa, who's been in the industry for over 30 years and has been through
Can you say that?
I know.
I don't think it's his son. It's her son.
I have some liberties that most don't.
Yeah,
wow. Everyone just aged me right there.
But
then again, Joe and I are the same age. So we're just going to go with that.
The reason I bring that up is that's 4 different economic cycles that she's weathered the storm through and then been able to say, how do we successfully advocate for our clients in those different situations? And so corrective market is a professionals market, which is great, but it also what that means is that people who are in, as I mentioned earlier, in the space on a more normal price point, let's say the 1 million to 5 million range, are again more active and involved. But people in the luxury space, they are able to capitalize just as much, if not more.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on you bringing up this time frame, but that's okay.
Me too.
It's all kudos for you.
Of course it is. It's met with love. When we saw the biggest downturn, I think in Southern California was less than 10% in the last downturn. So I'm not expecting hardly anything this trip. I mean, what are your thoughts? Let's talk about, let's switch now to what do you see happening through the rest of 2022 going into 2023?
So I think we're still in an adjustive, corrective, whatever word somebody wants to use, market, depending what price point somebody's in and what price point the properties they're looking for. We're still a healthy real estate market for two reasons. Even though the interest rates have gone up, they are still historically low.
Yeah.
I mean, my first house was 12%.
Yeah.
So when somebody tells me they're looking at a 5% interest rate, I'm like, that's great. And also, I think that people forget that when we were in the threes, we were there for much longer than anticipated.
Right.
And part of that was, again, the pandemic. And I don't want to harp on the pandemic, but people had a chance to get out there and do it. And now it's just readjustment. The interest rates are so publicized in the media that people feel that the real estate market is really suffering, and that it's not.
Yeah.
We still have limited supply in every area. And I think that we do need this correction. We do need a professionals market. We do need to get some of the agents that, just got their license because they thought it was an easy thing and they don't know how to be the sounding board to their clients and the knowledge pool. And
I think the perfect word is advocacy.
An advocate for their clients. Thank you, Dylan. Those are the ones that, probably we also have the highest number of real estate agents right now than I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be that adjustment too. But the real estate market is still a healthy market.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to know that things, we have one client, such a sweet lady. She's like, I'm freaking out. And because we were on the market 28 days, nobody is used to that. They think there's something wrong with it.
Right.
And that's what it's going to be. We're going to come back to more days on market.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that's really we were under such different pressures that, people were grabbing anything. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that grab things that don't love what they bought.
Probably.
So,
even that's a great point too, especially from our side, which is, the standards of what we need to do from a contractual standpoint is we need to have people sign the CMA's competitive market analysis. We need to have them sign the MLS listings. We have to have them, go back and say, look, because of how things were, we agree to what we all discussed here, not just we told you to go spend an extra $200,000 to get this house and now you're upset about it. So there's a legal standpoint behind it too. But something we were talking about briefly, which is, a corrective market, and I have this visual that I can send you, but just looking at 2022 versus 2028, we're not in 2028 and we're not anywhere close.
2008.
Thank you.
We're not quite the 2028 yet.
So no, you're just looking at things like, credit standards and what's there. So 2008, it was loose credit standards versus very tight now.
Right.
Extensive subprime lending. There's little to none now. Abundant supply. We have extremely historically low amount of inventory. However, marginally it is going back up, which is good to see. And then looking at things like unemployment, so looking at a greater scope of the economic environment, we have unemployment is falling now versus being rising before. So when we're looking at historical, the cyclical nature of history, we're not anywhere close to that. This is a good thing for what's going on. Sorry.
Yeah, no. And the main difference is everyone's point of consciousness was what happened in 2008 and 2009.
Oh, there's no comparison.
But this is not that. But people see and remember it and have, a visceral reaction to what was happening, especially if they knew anybody that potentially lost their home in a short sale or bankruptcy or foreclosures, because it was a very different market. Lending was being lent to anybody that had a pulse, and it shouldn't have been. So that was a huge difference than where we are now. So we're going to correct, and it's going to be a very strong market. And we just have to know that it's going to take a little bit longer. And look at anything else. Real estate is still the safest and best investment that somebody can make.
So the trends we're seeing from some of the publications out there is, one is equity in your homes is going to stay and or increase over time. Inventory is going to go up, albeit marginally. Interest rates are going to go up as the year goes on. We all know that from the Fed and what's happening. But what we're seeing in the last couple of weeks is that interest rates have been as historically low as they were in April of this year, which is a great thing for buyers in looking to get a mortgage. And overall, things will normalize out. So days on market will increase, as Lisa had mentioned. But these are all good indicators for stabilization versus it being so hot and competitive that you don't even know what you're doing. You're just hoping to you're like throwing your hat in the ring against 20 plus other offers and saying, I hope I get it.
Yeah.
Versus having the time to do your due diligence actually and say, like, look, how can I decide if this is the right place for me, and actually making a good decisive decision.
But your question about the real estate market too, and I think with the biggest change that I've seen with my clients is now they're like, I don't need all of my money in one house, in one place.
Right.
I'd like to be able to have homes in different places so that if this world doesn't change back to what we all knew it before, we do have a place if we want to get out of a big metropolitan city. We can go someplace else. And so I think that's also a catalyst of a lot of the higher end property selling is people are like, I'm going to divest, as Dylan had mentioned in the beginning. I'm going to have my portfolio have more than just one or two properties. I'm going to have it where I have several homes that we have safe havens. So because our clients want to have homes throughout the United States, we have an amazing network that can help them with agents that have the same level of service and expertise that we can pair them with and help them with homes throughout the United States, which has been very, very helpful to a lot of our clients.
And Lisa's not a self-promoter, so the way to really push that forward is if you're looking for a clone of someone you've, actually spent the time and energy to, vet and then appreciate their advocacy, as I've used that word time and time again, but also how do you advise them with also all of their advisors? Lisa has a network that she's built through team coaching, through, different methods throughout the country where like if you're looking for someone who is similar in nature, understands the market for top to bottom and like the back of their hand, and has the ability to kind of network how to find properties that are off market, as we've mentioned in this luxury market, and really try to push forward the agenda of someone they're looking to spend the money and it's good for all parties. There's an endless network of people that she has that can absolutely fill that specific criteria.
Very important because you don't want to lose that sense of touch with your clients. You want to make sure they're getting the level of expertise they've come to expect.
Well, and I also want to know they're going to be taken care of. Period. End of story. Otherwise I don't want to put my name to somebody. So I vet everybody, and it's been, as a matter of fact, we just closed one today from somebody in Georgia that was referred, and it's just nice to know that there's other people that do business similarly and care about the actual the client's needs, not just a transaction, because that's clearly, as you know, not how I built my business. It's all about the relationship base.
There's a lot of great agents out there. You just have to find them. And,
it speaks highly to the credibility of the people you're getting them in touch with, but also for her. So if you have someone or myself to extend a hand to elsewhere, it says a lot about you if they're going to act the same way.
Yeah, I agree. Well, guys, thank you for coming in today. This is a lot of great information. I'm surprised. I thought inventory was going up. I really thought it was going up. I thought prices were coming down a little bit, but what do I know about residential real estate? And that's why I refer my deals to Lisa and Dylan. Not something I want to touch or understand even. So, well, guys, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
You bet. And
Great
for those of you watching today, make sure you give this video a like. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe. And I am going to put Lisa and Dylan's contact information down below so you can reach out to them.
Don't just hit it. Smash that button.
Smash the hell out of it.